Hi everybody, James Elson here at Centurion Running. This video is especially for all you crews, pacers and supporters out there hoping to come to one of our events in person to support your runner, and for you runners entered into any of our events to be able to send to one of those groups so that they know the rules, regulations, what is and isn't okay at the races to make them sustainable longer term. Really important everyone understands the definitions between these groups, what they mean and why they're in place. Principally, we need to make sure that the races are sustainable, and the way we do that is by ensuring that all of the users who are out on trail on race weekends are happy and they're encouraging runners too, that landlords that we've got permissions from and contracts in place with feel like we're upholding those, and that everybody associated with the trail feels like they're having a great experience around our events. So I'm going to cover off crews, then pacers, then supporters, the differences between those three groups, and if you're coming as one of those entities, then please stand by for the information that will help you have the best weekend possible. So let's start with crews first. Crews refer to a group or a single person who looks after you, the runner, on race weekend, in person, offering you food, support, well-being, welfare, foot care, and goodness knows what only ever else to help you get to the finish line. Crews are only permitted at 3 of the 100 milers and the Winter Downs 200. So none of the 50 milers or the 50k races, and not at the Autumn 100 either. Crews can only attend to you at the locations listed on the crew tab on the race that you're entered into. So not the aid station tab, just the crew tab. Now, to clear up one of the biggest points of confusion, some of those crew locations are also aid stations. For example, on South Downsway 100, you can be crewed at Queen Elizabeth Country Park and Cocking in the early stages of the race. They're both very big aid stations, but they're also crew locations. Then, for example, in between those, at South Harting is an aid station that crew are not permitted at. Okay, so some of the aid stations it's okay, some aren't. If you just refer to the crew tab, you'll see all of the places you can see your runner, offer your runner physical help and support. At our events, everywhere else is off limit to crews. Okay, so at some races, they allow you to crew wherever you like in between those places. For us, it's literally an exclusive or exhaustive list on the crew tab of places you can crew your runner. Obviously, crews can also be spectators, pacers too, and spectators can end up crewing. But please make sure that those three things are understood independently of one another. So, for example, if you have a crew out on course at one of our hundreds, meeting you at the crew locations, they can go elsewhere to support you. They just can't hand you anything or take anything back off you in those places. So hopefully that clears that up, and you can appreciate that there is some crossover at times and things change on race weekend too. One other point on crews, please make sure you only have one crew vehicle out for you at any time, and no motorhomes, please. I know it sounds crazy, but we've had some extremely large vehicles show up to some crew locations with some very low height barriers. No motorhomes and only one crew vehicle per person. On to the second group, pacers. Pacers are permitted at 100-mile races, but not at the 50 milers or the 50Ks or at the Winter Downs 200. And a pacer is someone, an individual, who moves with the runner at any one time to offer support, but more importantly, as a safety consideration. So some of our events travel through towns, villages, remote sections of trail at night where some runners feel very vulnerable. And the idea is that the pacer or buddy runner can offer that moral support and a bit of extra feeling of security for the runner in those difficult situations. It's absolutely not essential, but it is an option to you. A pacer or buddy runner must be with you at all times. They can't run off down the trail ahead and get supplies for you and come back. They can't drop back too far either. They should be with you at all times, within a sensible distance from you at all times. They're welcome to help themselves to supplies at the checkpoints, but they must come into those with you. So they're welcome to the food, drink, hot drinks, everything else, all the support at the checkpoints. Similarly, if you drop out of the race, obviously your pacer drops out too. We will look after you both. The pacers, crucially, can only hand over at crew locations, and only from halfway at the South Downsway 100, North Downsway 100, Thames Path 100, have a look at the specific race or what we deem halfway, e.g. Henley, mile 51 at the Thames Path 100, for example. And for the last leg of the Autumn 100, so only at mile 75 for the last leg of the Autumn 100. One other really important rule for pacers, they can only hand over at those crew locations. So they will be going to significant stretches with you without the opportunity to drop out or hand over to a new person. So you can only pick up a new pacer at one of the later crew locations. Again, as an example, you have a crew location at Washington on the South Downs Way 100. If you pick up a pacer there, they must go all the way to Devil's Dyke crew location before they're able to stop and you can hand over. Of course, you don't have to hand over at all. We do have pacers go the entire second half of events with some 100-mile runners. Just bear in mind, as a pacer, you might be out there for a very, very long time. You'll be moving at the pace of your runner, not the natural pace to you, so that might be slower than you might usually go. You might be getting colder than you might think. Carry the mandatory kit list, but think also what might I need if, practically speaking, I'm out in bad weather walking with my runner for a very long period of time, okay? The pacer cannot offer you physical support. They can't push or pull you along. I know it sounds crazy. We've seen it happen. And they shouldn't carry any supplies for you, so no muling. The pacer can't suddenly take all of your food off you and leave you carrying just your mandatory kit. You should carry your own supplies. On to the third group, and this is the broadest group of all and the one that creates the most confusion, supporters. Supporters, we massively encourage. We want people out on the course over race weekend cheering all the runners on, okay? But also they're the broadest group. They're the ones that have the most potential to cause issues because often they show up unannounced and unknowingly break the rules. So runners, this is really now for you to send to anybody you think might likely pop up on race weekend to let them know what's okay and what's not. So supporters refers to anybody coming out to offer moral support, cheering on, encouragement for runner or all the runners over race weekends. Where can they go? What can they do? They can go anywhere they like, but they must not park at aid stations that are off limits to crews. So the easy thing to do is, if you at a race where crews are permitted, is send anybody who might be out supporting you a list of the crew locations and say, you're welcome to go there. They can also attend anywhere else on the trail. We particularly encourage on foot or by bike because that tends to mean they've parked further away from the trail and they've walked in and they've cheered you on, and that way it has the least possible impact on or around the race route itself. As long as they don't park at one of the aid stations that's off limit, and as long as they're respectful of local residents, noise and lights at night, blocking driveways, parking up in lay-bys, that kind of thing, they can go anywhere they like. So, you know, don't tell the supporters they're not welcome. They most certainly are. We'd love to see them out there. Just bear in mind that for one or two of the races, 100 Hills 50K and Chiltern Wonderland 50 being two in specific, supporters can only see you at certain locations. And it's the reason also we only permit supporters at certain places on the Autumn 100. They go through very remote rural areas. So anywhere that there's any parking whatsoever, there might be the odd place that's kind of a passing place only where there's room for one car, or tiny villages where any additional traffic is just going to block the whole village up. Those are prevalent on those three routes, and they're all in that Chiltern area just north of the Thames there. So please, for those races, refer to the supporters tab on the website. So you find an aid station tab, a crew tab, and a supporters tab. They should focus on the supporters tab, and that'll tell them some great places to go and to watch you from. Usually at a pub or a restaurant or something that happens to be along the way. I hope that clears a lot of confusion up. I hope that makes things simpler for everybody. We really need this to be communicated widely. So if you're a runner at one of our events, please send this to anyone you think falls into one of those three categories. It will help make all of our events smoother, more sustainable, and everyone in the community to have a better experience coming out of race weekend. Thanks, and see you at a race soon.